Okay, so my spiritual journey. I grew up in a household that was not a church-going household. My mother considered herself a Methodist, but did not attend church, except perhaps on Easter. But that was about it. My dad, I never saw my dad go to church at all. But they thought that it was a good thing for my brother and I to learn something of the Bible, I guess. I'm not sure what went through their minds, but they sent us to a Presbyterian Bible church, Sunday school, basically. And from the time I was 4 or 5 years old until 8, my brother and I both attended a Presbyterian Sunday school. And I have a record that shows that I apparently tried to learn some verses from the Bible and even inscribed them on a card of some sort, and I even still have that card. But Sunday school didn't make a great deal of impression on me. And my parents did not attend the church. They just sent us to the Sunday school. So the one thing I remember out of the Sunday school was a very graphic lesson on why not to smoke. So after my brother and I got to be 8 and 10, we objected to having to go to Sunday school on Sunday morning, and so we didn't have to go anymore. So from then on, I was unassociated with any church through high school, and I went to high school at University High School in Los Angeles, which is a feeder high school for UCLA, and it seemed natural and to just go out of high school and right into UCLA. And I lived at home, so I didn't have well, my experience in high school actually was through the Masonic Affiliate Club. This was, I'm sorry, that came later. In high school, it was just study. I learned that I had a real interest in science at that point. I graduated from high school and went to UCLA. And in UCLA, my social life centered around the Masonic Affiliate Club, which was a sort of an alternative to the sorority fraternity social life that went on there. The Masonic Club had a beautiful big stone building, the biggest dance floor on campus, had its own pool room, kitchen that could serve 100 people, and study rooms. And it was paid for by the California Masons. And anybody who had any sort of a relative that had ever been a Mason could become a member of the club. And that was my social life during college. So, and again, no connection with any sort of church there. When I graduated from college at UCLA, the Korean War was just winding down. I think about the time I graduated, the shooting had stopped, but they were still drafting young men. And I didn't want to be drafted. If I went to graduate school, I didn't want to be drafted out of school. So I said, well, went to the draft board and said, take me now, let's get it over with. So I was drafted into the Army, and that's when things really began to change for me. I was sent to, after basic training in California, was sent to a radio repair school in Georgia, and then was assigned to go to Alaska. Well, I was sent first to Seattle to await shipment to Alaska. And so as it turned out, I had a lot of free time during that time. I was about 3 weeks in Seattle waiting to be sent to Alaska. And so I had free time, and I gravitated towards the University of Seattle, University of Washington in Seattle, because that was the milieu that I was used to. And so wandering around the campus, I ran into a open house run by the Methodist youth group at the school. And they were very warm and invited me in, and we talked for a while. And when they learned I was going to Alaska, they said, well, you should look up the Reverend, and I now can't remember his name, at the Anchorage Methodist Church. So in due time, when I got to Alaska and got settled there, I found my way to the Methodist Church. And that was a sort of a turning point, because the people there were just very warm. They took I was lonely. I did not take very well to Army life. And so this was it was really nice to be involved with a very nice family, the minister and his wife and 4 girls. And so they took me in, and in due course, I started doing things for the church and trying to help out. And so eventually I joined the Methodist Church. So this is the first time in my life I actually have become officially connected to a religious group. And I did a lot with the Methodist Church there. I got into a play, and it was just a very friendly place. And I joined the church, but I found myself having some difficulties with it, because the social life was wonderful. It was inspiring to hear the minister sermon. But when we were asked to rise and repeat the I believes, I found myself finding, well, I can't really say that, because I didn't think I really believed in some of these things. But otherwise, that was really very good for me there. Well, I spent 2 years in the Fort Richardson there in Anchorage, Alaska, and managed to get accepted to graduate school at UCLA. You could, if you got accepted to a accredited school, you could get up to a few months release from your 2-year Army appointment. So I was able to get out early, about 2 months early. I wouldn't say I went in March and I got out in January, so a little less than 2 years. Went back home to Los Angeles. And having now become a member of a Methodist church, I started attending Westwood Methodist Church in West LA. This was a very different experience for me from the Alaska church, which was a small, very intimate little place of neighborhood. People knew each other. Westwood Methodist was a grand big building with a great big picture window, a stained glass window. A minister who was gave inspiring sermons. And it was a big shock to go to a church like that from having been in this little sort of almost country church in Anchorage. And I became sort of disillusioned. It just seemed like this was not what I really signed up for. But I continued with things that were involved with the Methodists. There was a Methodist youth group around that I got in touch with, and I went to a couple of conferences. So I got back to Los Angeles in the spring, well, January, and I'd been accepted to go to graduate school at UCLA. I didn't intend to go to my whole graduate program at UCLA. That was really a way to get out of the Army, and I was pretty sure I could get accepted if I applied there, since I'd been an undergraduate. Things don't go like that anymore, but that's the way it was then. After the spring semester at UCLA, I transferred to Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley. Again, gravitated to the Methodist youth group at Berkeley, the student group. And they had a nice area or building in which they had all sorts of activities going. And so I started getting associated with the Methodist group there. Well, a number of the people in the Methodist group also lived at a student residential group that was run by Quakers, and they had a house right off the Berkeley campus, which they called Lifestream House. And they put up, I would guess, 12 or 14 students. They had rooms there, and it was a very friendly group. And I got associated with that because a number of the Methodist people also lived there. So I went to dinner there, and that's where I met Mochiko. Mochiko was living there at Lifestream House. So after a while, getting to know people there, I began to hear about Quakers, and Mochiko was attending Berkeley meeting. And so I started attending the meeting with her. And once I got to Berkeley meeting, I felt, well, this is home. It just really appealed to me, the Quaker manner of worship, the friendliness. I was attracted by the peace testimony. And the way people treated each other. This just seemed like the right place for me. So I began attending the Quaker meeting. Well, in due course, began seeing Mochiko more often, and eventually we got married. And but we were, well, I certainly was not that close to, it never occurred to me that a Quaker wedding. I'm not sure if it did for Mochiko or not, but anyway, we were married at the Wesley Foundation in Berkeley. They have their own building, as I said, and the people in the Wesley Foundation, youth people, basically put on our wedding for us. They did everything to get it all organized and made a very nice day out. So where do we go from there? When I completed my graduate work at Berkeley, I was awarded a postdoctoral, or not a post, yeah, it was a postdoctoral appointment in England. And so we traveled to England for a year, ended up staying 2 years, and had this wonderful experience of attending Oxford meeting, because we were living fairly near to Oxford. And that was quite an interesting experience too, because Oxford meeting contrasted greatly with the student kind of atmosphere that we had at Berkeley. This was a much more intellectual meeting, where when somebody rose to speak, it was a well thought out message that was very clear and was spoken in perfectly good English. So that was a good experience. In due course, we completed 2 years in England and returned to take up a position at the University of Maryland. And we got to this area and started looking for Quakers. We thought we really wanted to join a meeting. Couldn't find any Quakers. We looked in the phone book under Q, and nothing. Under R for Religious Society of, nothing. So eventually, I was visiting at the Bureau of Standards and ran into Vic Kaufman, who was a scientist who was a member of the meeting. And somehow in the conversation, it came out that we were looking for Quakers. And he said, "Oh, that's easy. He says, just go to a phone directory and look up Weatherall." As it turned out, the Weatheralls were the sort of the what would you call it, the old family of a Delphi meeting. And so we looked up in the phone book, and here's a bunch of Weatheralls listed. Which one do I call? So I picked one and called, and turned out it didn't matter which one you called, they were all interested. And so we got connected with a Delphi meeting through that connection. And at that point we had a young girl, Audrey, and another one coming along. So we started attending a Delphi meeting, and our kids grew up in a Delphi meeting. And we were there for a number of years, and eventually Sally Weatherall, who was the wife of the old person of the meeting, I can't think of the word, invited us to, I think she invited Mochiko to become a member of the meeting. So we in fact finally became officially associated with Quakers then, and I began to consider myself a Quaker. And about that time, as our kids were beginning to grow up, we learned about the camping program, and this became a big part of the life for our children and for me. We sent Audrey to her camp when she was old enough, which I think was probably 8. She went to Catoctin camp, and I was very impressed with the camping program. What it was just our kids when they came back from a session at camps were just changed people. It was and it was clear that being in a Quaker organization like that really did very good things for our kids. And so I became more associated with the camps, beginning to help out with things. And sitting opposite me in the front row is Lou Harrington, who was clerk of the program that took care of the camps, the camping, what was it called now? The Catoctin Quaker camps.
Properties.
Yeah, the property, yeah. So, I got connected there with the camping program and enjoyed very much the fellowship and the opportunity to do things that were, to me, seemed like really meaningful things for our young people. And for many years, I worked with the camps and served as clerk of the camping program committee for a number of years. I don't remember how many. Okay, I passed over an important part of my life, though, that I failed to mention, and that was soon after Mocho and I got married. We heard about a program run by, it's called Sequoia Seminars. This was a program to study the teachings of Jesus in an intensive way, or a 2-week period. It was held at Ben Lomond at a camp there near Santa Cruz in California. It consisted of, I think it was 14 people who spent 2 weeks in an intensive study of the teachings of Jesus, using as a reference a book which is called The Teachings of Jesus. It was put together by Harry Sharman. Is it Harry? I think it was Harry Sharman. And it was the program that we attended was at Ben Lomond, California, and was actually taken care of by Harry Rathman, a member of Palo Alto meeting. And we spent 2 weeks there really looking intensively at the teachings of Jesus. Now, the book, The Teachings of Jesus, is just that. It takes out all of the miracles, or ignores the miracles, talks about what it is the authors think was actually what Jesus was saying. And I found that to be a very powerful experience, because it helped to free me from the being upset, or I wouldn't say upset, but questioning the miracles, which always, as a budding scientist, was something that bothered me a little bit. But I was impressed by the fact that we could sit and look at what Jesus had said as recorded in the Gospels, and realizing that that was so the teachings alone justified treating Jesus as a remarkable man and something that we could could study with our own benefit. So that was for me a very powerful change in my life, and I began trying to practice meditation as a result of being in that program. So I would consider that really a turning point in my life. The way that it could tell me or show me how to think about my relation to God without having to justify it through things that I really found hard to believe. So we've been at Delphi meeting for quite a few years, and then we moved to Columbia. It seemed it was closer to come to Sandy Spring meeting, and we had learned a lot about Sandy Spring meeting through association with the camps, because a lot of the people at Sandy Spring were somehow associated with the camps. So we moved here and became members of Sandy Spring meeting. And one side event there, after I finished my graduate work, I was thinking in terms of what to do with my life. Joan Baez was an important singer at the time, and I heard that her father was a physicist working in France. And as it turned out, we were going to, I'm not sure what the occasion was, but I was in France. And so I looked up Al Baez, thinking, I'd like to talk to a guy who's working in socially important work. And what should I do with my life? And I talked to him, and he basically told me, go to work and work for a while doing science, and then figure out what you want to do, which was pretty good advice, I think. Well, I think that's about it. But that's how I got to be where I am today. I credit a lot of it to my wife, who I met through Quakers, and it was her interest in Quakerism that brought me into contact with Quakers. Yeah.
So how has your background in science influenced your beliefs and your faith?
Well, that's a deep question. I have trouble with God in the clouds sort of concept, but I have come to believe that there's something going on. Too much in the natural world seems to be too well organized to have just arisen out of nowhere. But I can't explain it. I don't know what to say about that. It's but in a sense, I worship the sense of orderliness that one can find if you look into the universe from a scientific point of view, and that's hard to see how that comes out of nowhere. The connection of mathematics, which is you'd think of as being a construct that just comes from intellectual, trying to understand what would you say? Mathematics has a very good structure to it, where it seems to be very orderly, and there seems to be a connection between what you can learn from mathematics and the workings of the natural world. And that strikes me as a sort of a wonderful and slightly frightening thing.
Thank you.
Alan, this is George Peachy. It sounds like you've had quite a variety of experience with a variety of Quaker meetings everywhere from LA to England and in between. And I was trying to do some math. It sounds like maybe you first started with the Quakers in what, the 50s or 60s? And I'm just curious if you have any reflections on how all those different Quaker experiences, Quaker meetings, were the same or how they were different.
Well, I think we certainly found that the Oxford meeting was very different from the kind of meeting we had in Berkeley, which Berkeley was just more sort of free flowing. People's messages there were heartfelt and but sincere, but very different from the sort of thing that more intellectual kinds of messages that we found at the Oxford meeting. But we also, in later years, we spent a sabbatical year in Germany, and attended a German Quaker meeting. In Geneva meeting, which was interesting because that was a bilingual meeting where messages were given. Half of the messages would be given in English and half of them be given in French. And that was sort of interesting and challenging. Yeah, very different styles of Quaker meetings, depending on which country you're in. Yeah.
Alan, can I ask you the opposite question that was asked a few minutes ago about your relationship with science and Quakerism or faith? So the opposite question to me is, how has Quakerism and being a person of your own faith, how has it influenced your approach to your work?
I guess I'd have to say that I just feel that my work as a scientist is to try to understand what nature is telling me or is trying to tell us, and so it's a difficult question to answer. I don't know that in the scientific world you follow where the science takes you, and it's I guess it influences in the sense that important in science is that you're honest and that you say it as it is and don't allow any personal biases to enter whatever it is you try to publish or show as a result of the work.
Could friends in the meeting house, please identify yourself when you speak? Those of us on Zoom can only see Alan. Thanks.
Yeah,
All right, it's Jonathan Glass, and thank you very much. Wondered if your life experience and experience with Quakerism, but your life experience makes you optimistic about the future.
But I am optimistic about the long-term future because I think we've been able to get over very bad times. We as a nation, but failed many times too. So yeah, I'm basically an optimist. I look for the right side.
Is that a function of physics or faith?
Or both.
Probably more faith than physics.
Alan, this is Jenny Steyer. So I've watched you in motion cut for the last quarter of a century. And I've watched you guys show up in your lives speak. And I do believe in miracles. And I think it's so awesome that you met her in Berkeley and you ended up in our meeting. And I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a happy experience too. This place. That Mochico hates to remember the name of it, the Life Stream House, but it was a really big influence on both of them.
It was run by North Carolina friends. They came up from North Carolina to work with students. 1950.
Probably,
Yeah.
They had evening sessions to sort of, try to solve the problems of the world. I didn't attend many of those. Yeah, I know Mochico did.
Yeah. Those were the days that if you came up with right paradigm, truthful paradigm, the world's problem will be solved. And I think we thoroughly, really sincerely believe that short period of time.
Really forward-looking
Yeah.
for our lives.
Ellen, this is Claire Voss. I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about the transformations you witnessed in your children at camp. I asking that because it resonates very much with what my experience was and the years I spent on the camping program committee. But I'm wondering if you could give us just maybe a couple of examples of what made you feel like the kids maybe become truer to themselves.
The first summer that we were in the camps, our daughter went as soon as she was old enough to go to Catoctin camp, and it was 2 weeks. that's all we felt we could afford. We didn't know much about the camps at that point, but when she came back, she said, I want to go 4 weeks next year. And it was, she was just so, taken by the camping program that the way that the camps. Barry Morley was the director of the camps, and he was a big influence, I think, on everybody, including myself. I felt he just seemed to be doing such wonderful things at the camp and healing the kids and trusting them. I remember an occasion where I think some of the counselors at the camp had been revealed of drugs, pot, I suppose it was, and it even made the Washington newspaper that there were counselors at this camp that were giving drugs to the kids. Well, apparently they weren't. I think they were using drugs. But the response of Barry Morley, the camp director, was to have the kids figure out the problem themselves. What are we going to do about this? And I thought that was just, so it was a great way to deal with young people, was to encourage them to solve their own problems rather than try to dictate to them what the solution should be.
Yeah. I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't interfere or.
Well, you're a part of my life, so
What I like to tell about the camp is not, in addition to the experiences kids had, what happened 10 years later? What happened to these people? That all 3 of our kids, and I'm sure it has more to do with camp, it's the way they treat each professional world, they treat people with respect. I think in the long run, it sort of impacted the work situation. And I've seen that again and again and again. And I'm sure that came from their years of experiences at camp, how you treat each other with respect. I just wanted to throw that in.
Well, yeah, I credit the Stockton Quaker camp with making Quakers out of my kids, or at least 2 of them became friends. One of our kids is greatly influenced by it, but he doesn't believe that as part of his life.
But it's they internalize the way of interacting with the respectful people. All 3.
Yeah, and this was a part of being a part of a Quaker group that was trying to see the best they could and people around them and enjoy each other.
Thanks for watching our video. For more content from Sandy Spring Friends Meeting, click to subscribe.